Welcome back to Lore 2 Horror, where we dive deep into the stories, secrets, and nightmares behind gaming's most iconic creatures and characters. Today we're examining the Nemesis T-Type, the ultimate bioorganic weapon created by the Umbrella Corporation, and arguably the most effective and terrifying pursuer ever designed for a survival horror game. This isn't just another zombie or mindless monster. Nemesis represents the apex of Umbrella's bioweapons research, a creature that combines overwhelming physical power with tactical intelligence, mission focus, and an ability to adapt that makes it virtually unstoppable. Deep in the laboratories of Umbrella Europe lies the culmination of a decade's worth of research into the perfect biological weapon, a creature born not of accident, but of calculated design, a monster that would hunt with intelligence, kill with purpose, and pursue its prey across the burning streets of a dying city. This is the story of Nemesis, the pursuer, the most feared of all Umbrella's bioorganic weapons. Welcome to our deep dive into one of horror gaming's most iconic antagonists. Today we explore every aspect of Nemesis, from its origins in the darkest corners of Umbrella's research divisions, to its final moments in the ruins of Raccoon City. We'll uncover the scientific horrors that brought this creature to life, the political machinations that sent it hunting, and the desperate struggle for survival that defined its brief but terrifying existence. But to understand Nemesis, we must first understand the world that created it, a world where corporations held more power than governments, where human experimentation was disguised as medical research, and where the pursuit of the perfect weapon justified any atrocity. The story begins not with the creature itself, but with the ambitious scientists who dared to play God, the genesis of horror. In the 1980s, Umbrella Corporation faced a fundamental problem with their bioorganic weapons program. The T-virus, while capable of creating powerful mutations, carried with it an almost unavoidable side effect of severe intelligence degradation. Most BOWs created throughout this period were deemed failures because the virus eroded intelligence levels to the point where they could not be adequately trained or programmed to carry out complex commands. Even the mighty Tyrants, considered the ultimate expression of biological warfare, suffered from this limitation. According to internal Umbrella documents, the Tyrant was still unable to execute orders satisfactorily. The Hunter Project showed some promise, with its specimens capable of understanding basic commands. But each creature was only able to learn a few simple instructions from their trainer. This was more than just a technical limitation. It was an existential threat to Umbrella's business model. How could they sell bioweapons to military forces? If those weapons couldn't follow complex orders, how could they guarantee that a purchased Tyrant would target enemy forces and not turn on its handlers? The intelligence problem wasn't just about making better weapons. It was about making weapons that could be trusted. By 1988, Umbrella USA and Umbrella Europe were competing to solve this fundamental flaw. The American branch pursued their approach through the Tyrant Project, attempting to create human mutants that retained their intelligence through the transformation process. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, Umbrella Europe's No. 6 laboratory took a radically different approach. The Nemesis Project aimed to create parasitic organism that would take over cerebral functions within a BOW host. Rather than trying to preserve intelligence during mutation, they would introduce a separate intelligence that could control the mutated body. It was elegant in its simplicity and horrifying in its implications. The project's inspiration for parasitic control systems remains largely undocumented in available sources, though researchers appear to have drawn from natural parasitic organisms that could influence host behavior. What we do know is that this represented a fundamentally different approach from American bioweapon development. Under the direction of Umbrella Europe, teams of researchers began developing what they designated the Nemesis-type parasite. Development began in the late 1980s at Umbrella Europe's No. 6 laboratory. Based on available technical documentation, the parasite featured a central neural mass with 7 primary tentacles designed to integrate throughout the host's body, plus smaller appendages that would interface directly with the nervous system. The parasite represented a masterpiece of bioengineering. On its own, the Nemesis was unable to survive independently. It required a host to function and had no combat capabilities, specializing only in intelligence enhancement and neural control. But when successfully bonded with a compatible host, it would transform an unintelligent brute into a thinking weapon of unprecedented capability. Yet, like all of Umbrella's creations, the Nemesis project would extract a terrible price. The invasive and violent nature of the parasite killed most hosts within minutes, with Tyrants being a notable exception due to their enhanced resilience. The early years of research were marked by failure after failure, as test subjects died within minutes of implantation. The parasite was simply too aggressive, too alien, for most organisms to accept. The breakthrough that researchers needed would come from an unexpected source, and it would cost them one of their most valuable test subjects, the Lisa Trevor experiment. In 1988, word of the European Nemesis project reached the highest levels of Umbrella's American operations. Umbrella USA's Arclay laboratory team, led by Dr. William Birkin, managed to acquire the prototype parasite, thanks to backing from Oswell E. Spencer. Spencer himself had personally ordered the transfer, recognizing potential in the European research that could benefit his own projects. The Arclay team possessed something that the Europeans lacked: Lisa Trevor. Lisa was perhaps the most extraordinary test subject in Umbrella's entire history, a woman who had been subjected to decade after decade of viral experimentation. Thanks to her unique biological resilience, granted by prolonged progenitor virus exposure, she was able to not only survive Nemesis injection, but her body managed to absorb it entirely. What happened next shocked even Umbrella's most experienced researchers. Her body's defenses not only succeeded in killing the parasite, but incorporated its genetic material into her own biological matrix. Lisa's unique physiology, shaped by years of exposure to multiple viral strains, had somehow consumed the NA-alpha parasite completely, integrating its essence into her already twisted biology. This development led to the discovery of the G virus. From what should have been a failure, emerged one of Umbrella's most significant breakthroughs. The Golgotha virus, as it was initially designated, represented a new evolution in bioweapon technology. But for the Nemesis project, Lisa's absorption of the parasite was also its greatest setback. Without a host besides Lisa able to survive integration, Nemesis development stalled until the T-103 Tyrant became available in 1998. For nearly a decade, European researchers continued refining their parasite, while waiting for a host robust enough to survive the bonding process. During this extended development period, the S.T.A.R. underwent continuous refinement. Research logs suggest the parasite was improved over several years to address integration failures and enhance stability. Limited testing appears to have occurred on other BOWs, including Cerberus and Hunter specimens, though their simpler nervous systems meant results were highly inconsistent. Each failed experiment taught the researchers valuable lessons. They learned that the parasite needed to be carefully calibrating to its host's physiology. They discovered that certain types of nervous systems were more compatible than others. Most importantly, they realized that the ideal host would need to possess both the physical resilience to survive integration and sufficient neural complexity for the parasite to effectively control. The breakthrough they needed would finally come from their American counterparts, though it would arrive at a cost that neither side could have anticipated. The perfect host. The year 1998 marked a turning point for both branches of Umbrella's research. Development of the T-103 took place following successful refinement of the Tyrant T-002 model. The T-103 represented everything Umbrella had learned about creating the ideal bioweapon host. Creatures that possessed intelligence approaching that of normal humans, and could follow orders that would be impossible for more primitive BOWs. Unlike their predecessors, the T-103 models were designed for versatility. These specimens could serve as bodyguards, assassins targeting specific individuals, recovery agents sent to acquire important objects, and tactical support for engaging armed opposition. They could think, plan, and adapt to changing situations in ways that previous bioweapons simply couldn't manage. The T-103s were also mass-produced on an unprecedented scale. Following successful testing, the T-103 entered mass production at the Tyrant plant on Sheena Island. This wasn't just about creating a few prototype weapons. Umbrella was preparing for potential large-scale deployment, manufacturing bioweapons like military hardware. For the Nemesis project, the T-103 represented the answer to their decade-long search for a compatible host. The Tyrant possessed the physical resilience required to survive parasite injection, and the neural complexity needed to serve as a foundation for the NAFA's enhanced control systems. Based on compatibility testing, these creatures were robust enough to survive the integration process while maintaining the basic human-derived architectures that the parasite required to function effectively. Umbrella Europe requisitioned several of the new T-103 clones to serve as test subjects. The successful implantation of any eighth of parasites within these hosts marked the beginning of a new era in biological warfare. No longer would Umbrella need to choose between intelligence and power. The Nemesis T-Type would offer both in a single terrifying package. The fusion of parasite and host created result that reportedly exceeded Umbrella's projections. Based on available technical evaluations, successful integration created a supplementary neural network that enhanced intelligence while enabling remote control capabilities, representing what researchers considered a significant advancements in bioweapon technology. However, the integration process produced unexpected consequences that weren't fully anticipated. The NAFA didn't simply control its host like a remote operator. Instead, it appears to have fundamentally altered the creature's biology, creating a hybrid entity that possessed characteristics of both organisms. Rather than simple parasitic dominance, the transformation, the process of creating a Nemesis T-Type, was as much art as it was science. The biochemical secretions from the parasite promote cellular activity, but this enhancement also causes unavoidable side effects. Skin exposed to these chemicals becomes severely deformed and takes on a distinctive coloration with irregular texture. The excessive viral activity also triggers abnormal development throughout the host's physiology. The physical changes were immediately apparent to anyone who encountered a Nemesis T-Type. The creature lacks lips and nasal cartilage entirely, with underlying facial musculature and dental structure completely exposed. The creature's face became a grotesque display of raw tissue, giving it an appearance that was simultaneously humanoid and utterly alien. These effects result in an extremely disturbing appearance. According to research documentation, the parasite itself also tends to grow without restraint, potentially tearing through skin and posing a danger to the stability of the entire system. The Nemesis T-Type was a creature at war with itself, its own biology constantly threatening to tear it apart from within. To manage these dangerous transformations, Umbrella's engineers designed specialized equipment for their new weapon. The creature was fitted with a distinctive leather restraint system that served multiple purposes. This full body covering is bulletproof and blast-resistant, while also functioning as a biological restraint to suppress runaway cellular activity. This wasn't just protection for the creature, it was protection from the creature, designed to keep its mutations under control until they were tactically useful. The restraint system became one of Nemesis's most recognizable features, but it represented far more than equipment. Built into its structure were monitoring systems and biological regulator designed to prevent the creature from mutating beyond Umbrella's ability to control it. As long as the restraints remained intact, Nemesis would retain its humanoid form and follow its programming. Should the system be compromised, however, the creature's biological instability would be unleashed. The intelligence enhancement provided by the NE-alpha parasite was perhaps even more remarkable than the physical changes. The creature's cognitive ability far exceeds that of conventional beta-zopes, allowing it to continuously execute missions based on independent judgment. It can operate sophisticated weaponry such as rocket launchers that require specialized knowledge, adapting tactics to suit evolving situations. This was unprecedented in the world of bioweapons. Previous creatures had been little more than organic automaton, capable of following simple commands but lacking the capacity for strategic thinking. Nemesis could assess complex situations, develop tactical approaches, and modify its behavior based on environmental factors and target responses. But perhaps most unnervingly, Nemesis retained the capacity for speech. Due to enhanced intelligence, the creature can actually communicate verbally, though with an extremely limited vocabulary. It occasionally produces the word S.T.A.R.S, which serves as evidence of both its cognitive enhancement and its program focus on specific targets. That single word became Nemesis's calling card, a constant reminder of its purpose and its relentless dedication to mission completion. The fact that it could speak at all represented a terrifying evolution in bioweapon design. This wasn't just a monster, but a thinking, communicating predator with singular focus. The mission parameters, The deployment of Nemesis T-Type was not a decision made lightly by Umbrella's leadership. The creature represented years of research and substantial financial investment. More importantly, it represented Umbrella's response to their greatest corporate crisis to date, the Mansion Incident. The Spencer Mansion Incident was a localized T-virus outbreak that occurred at an Umbrella research facility between May and July 1998. Note, the original transcript was truncated here, but the later sections continue. I've kept the flow continuous. The human cost. Beyond immediate casualties, the Nemesis project represented a broader pattern of human exploitation that characterized Umbrella's operations throughout their corporate history. The systematic abuse of vulnerable population formed the foundation of their biological weapons program. The UBCS recruitment practices demonstrated this exploitation on a massive scale, targeting convicted criminals and desperate refugees who were given choices between death menace and corporate service. These individuals genuinely believed they were participated in humanitarian operations, making their exploitation particularly cruel. Most UBCS personnel deployed to Raccoon City were predetermined casualties in Umbrella's planning. The corporation understood that the majority would die during the mission, but viewed these deaths as acceptable losses in exchange for combat data about bioweapon effectiveness against trained military targets. The psychological pressure of facing bioweapons, while knowing that corporate employers had essentially abandoned them, created despair that drove even experienced soldiers to suicide. Personal accounts recovered from UBCS positions suggest that some operatives concluded that execution would have been preferable to their current situation. Carlos Oliveira's transformation from corporate mercenary to hero represented one individual's journey from exploitation through moral awakening to personal redemption. His survival demonstrated that even victims of corporate manipulation could transcend their circumstance and choose to fight for justice rather than profit. Captain Mikhail Victor's sacrifice embodied the tragedy of good people trapped within evil systems. He had joined the UBCS to save his comrades' lives, only to discover he was leading those same individuals into a slaughter orchestrated by the corporation they served. The technological legacy. Despite its operational failure, the Nemesis project contributed significantly to biological weapons development. The successful integration of the NEA alpha parasite with a T-103 host proved that parasitic control systems could overcome fundamental limitations that had plagued previous bioweapon designs. However, the extensive surgical procedures required for Nemesis T-Type creation made mass production economically impractical. Unlike simpler bioweapons that could be cultivated in basic laboratory conditions, creatures like Nemesis required sophisticated medical facilities and highly trained technicians for successful creation. These production constraints meant that Nemesis T-Types would remain expensive, specialized weapons, rather than mass-produced military assets. The technology was better suited to targeted elimination missions and covert operations than large-scale military deployment. Nevertheless, the fundamental principles demonstrated by the project would influence bioweapon research for decades. The concept of using engineered parasites to enhance existing bioweapons became a template that various organizations would refine and adapt long after Umbrella's dissolution. External parties such as rival corporations and rogue intelligence operatives were interested in recovering Nemesis samples and combat data for their own organizations, ensuring that the technology would continue to evolve and proliferate, despite its original creator's downfall. The creature's brief operational history had established proof of concept for intelligent bioweapons, demonstrating that such creatures were not only possible, but could be effective under specific circumstances. This knowledge would drive continued research into parasitic control systems and artificial intelligence integration with biological platforms. Future bioweapon development would build on these discoveries while attempting to address the stability problems that had ultimately led to Nemesis's breakdown. The challenge for subsequent researchers would be maintaining the advantages of parasitic enhancement while developing more reliable control mechanisms that could prevent the kind of mission deviation that had compromised the original project. The psychological warfare. What made Nemesis particularly effective wasn't just its physical capabilities or enhanced intelligence, but the psychological warfare inherent in its design. The creature represented a weaponized form of fear that was arguably more devastating than its actual combat performance. The persistent nature of Nemesis's pursuit created psychological pressure that conventional weapons couldn't match. Unlike traditional horror monsters that appeared, attacked, and either killed their victims or were defeated, Nemesis operated on a different principle: sustained psychological torture through the constant threat of renewed attack. This persistence created despair that went beyond immediate physical danger. Targets had to live with the knowledge that they were being hunted by something intelligent enough to learn from previous encounters, durable enough to survive attacks that would destroy normal threats, and single-minded enough to continue pursuing them, regardless of obstacles or setbacks. The creature's limited vocabulary made these psychological tactics more effective. The repeated utterance of S.T.A.R.S served as both identification of its targets and a constant reminder that the hunt was personal rather than random. This wasn't a mindless beast killing indiscriminately. It was an assassin that knew exactly who it was hunting and why. Based on survivor accounts, the psychological impact extended beyond immediate targets to anyone who witnessed the creature's capabilities. The knowledge that such beings could exist and could be deployed against civilian population created broader anxiety that served Umbrella's interests. Even after the creature's destruction, the intelligence revolution, the successful integration of artificial intelligence with biological weapon systems represented a fundamental shift in the nature of warfare. For the first time, weapons could operate with near-human intelligence while possessing capabilities that exceeded conventional military assets. The NEA parasite's cognitive enhancement allowed autonomous operation for extended periods without human oversight. This capability made bioweapons attractive for operation where human handlers would be impractical or vulnerable, such as infiltration missions behind enemy lines, or elimination of targets in heavily defended areas. However, this intelligence also created vulnerability that enemies could potentially exploit. The creature's capacity for learning and adaptation meant that its behavior could theoretically be predicted and manipulated by adversaries who understood its decision-making patterns. The development of countermeasures against intelligent bioweapons would require approaches combining traditional military tactics with insights from psychology and cognitive science. Defeating creatures like Nemesis might require understanding their thought processes as much as their physical capabilities. Future conflicts involving intelligent bioweapons could resemble games of chess more than conventional battles, with success depending on the ability to outthink artificial opponents, rather than simply overpowering them through superior firepower. The failed containment. Despite Umbrella's extensive planning and advanced technology, the Nemesis project ultimately failed to achieve its primary objectives. The creature's inability to eliminate all S.T.A.R.S survivors meant that witnesses to corporate crimes remained alive to testify against the corporation. This failure resulted from fundamental miscalculations about human determination rather than technological limitations. Umbrella's planners had apparently assumed that overwhelming technological superiority would guarantee mission success, but they hadn't adequately accounted for the simple human refusal to surrender when fighting for survival and justice. The creature's progressive mutations actually worked against mission effectiveness in many cases. While adaptations made Nemesis more physically capable, they also made it less controllable and increasingly unpredictable. The same intelligence that made the creature effective as a hunter also enabled it to prioritize self-preservation over mission completion when survival was threatened. This limitation meant that biological weapons would always possess inherent reliability problems when deployed against determined opposition. Creatures might perform perfectly during controlled testing, but become counterproductive when faced with sustained resistance that exceeded their original parameters. The failure to eliminate key witnesses ultimately contributed to Umbrella's corporate collapse. The survival of individuals like Jill Valentine and Carlos Olivero ensured that evidence of the corporation's crimes would eventually emerge, creating legal and financial consequences that proved fatal to corporate survival. The moral reckoning. The Nemesis project forced fundamental questions about the ethical implications of advanced biological research and the acceptable limits of technological development. The successful creation of an intelligent organism designed specifically for assassination raised moral concerns that existing frameworks were poorly equipped to address. The creature's apparent capacity for suffering, evidenced by its desperate mutations during final encounters, created new categories of ethical consideration. If Nemesis could experience something analogous to pain and distress, then its creation represented cruelty that transcended normal weapons development. The project's researchers had apparently convinced themselves that military applications justified their work, but this utilitarian reasoning ignored fundamental questions about creating sentient beings whose existence was defined by violence. The pursuit of technological advancement had proceeded without adequate consideration of moral implications or long-term consequences. Future biological research would need to grapple with these ethical challenges in ways that the Nemesis project had failed to address. The development of increasingly sophisticated artificial organisms would require corresponding advances in moral reasoning and regulatory frameworks. The endless pursuit, the story of Nemesis, ultimately represents more than the tale of a single bioweapon or corporate conspiracy. It embodies humanity's ongoing struggle with the consequences of technological advancement and the moral challenges that accompany scientific progress. The creature's relentless pursuit serves as a metaphor for how technological capabilities, once developed, can acquire momentum that exceeds their creator's ability to control. Like the monster that hunted through Raccoon City streets, advanced technologies often outlive the organizations that create them and find applications that were never intended by their original designers. The NEA for parasite technology has become a template for future bioweapon development, inspiring variations that address the limitations observed in the original design. The knowledge required to create such creatures has dispersed throughout the global research community, ensuring that similar threats will continue to emerge, regardless of efforts to prevent proliferation. But the story also demonstrates that even the most advanced technology remains subject to human choice and moral agency. The creature's ultimate defeat came not through superior technology, but through the determination of individuals who refused to accept that corporate power could override human dignity and rights. This tension between technological capability and moral choice continues to define humanity's relationship with biological research. Each breakthrough creates possibilities for both benefit and harm, requiring constant vigilance to ensure that scientific advancement serves human welfare rather than undermining it. The legacy of Nemesis serves as both warning and inspiration. It warns of dangers that result when technological development proceeds without ethical constraints or democratic oversight, but it also demonstrates that human beings can overcome sophisticated threats when willing to fight for something greater than themselves. In Raccoon City's burning streets, a few determined individuals proved that the human spirit could triumph over corporate greed and technological terror. Their victory was costly and temporary, but it showed that no weapon, regardless of sophistication, could ultimately defeat the simple human refusal to surrender in the face of injustice. The hunt may continue in new forms with new technologies, but so too does humanity's capacity for resistance, adaptation, and moral growth. As long as individuals are willing to stand against those who would use advanced technologies to dominate others, there remains hope that the future will be shaped by human choice, rather than technological determinism. The complete story of Nemesis is ultimately about choices, those made by scientists who prioritized advancement over ethics, by executives who valued profit over human life, by officials who chose secrecy over accountability, and by ordinary people who chose courage over safety. These choices and their consequences continue to influence our world, affecting everything from security policy to personal decisions about civic engagement. The creature may be gone, but the questions it raised about power, accountability, and the proper relationship between technology and humanity remain as relevant as ever. Nemesis was more than a bioweapon. It was a reflection of humanity's fears about corporate power and scientific advancement corrupted by greed. The creature's story serves as a perpetual reminder that freedom and dignity require eternal vigilance against those who would exploit technology for domination. The pursuit continues, but so does resistance. As long as people are willing to fight for justice and human dignity, technology can serve humanity rather than enslaving it. Thank you for joining me on this comprehensive exploration of one of horror gaming's most iconic antagonists. The story of Nemesis is both a cautionary tale about unchecked corporate power and a testament to human resilience in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Resident Evil's darkest corners, please like this video and subscribe for more exploration of gaming's most fascinating lore. Until next time, stay curious, horrifying, and remember, in the world of survival horror, it's not the monsters we should fear most, but the humans who create them. sweet dreams, and may your pursuit of truth never end.